added in the 80s. This was all built up just simply to hold these platforms to these launchers. This deck here and the deck that we walked around up there, those bread boxes, those are replica Tomahawk launchers, but originally they would have launchers that looked just like this. Now in World War II, there was a 5-inch gun mount here and a 5-inch gun mount where that other missile deck is. But again, they removed those gun mounts. Figured a Tomahawk was a good trade-off for a 5-inch gun. So the first thing we'll look at here is these round tubes. These are Harpoon anti-ship missiles. Called the quad canister launchers. Again, these are replicas, but when they were normally in a Kevlar tube, and when they load them, the tube and the missile comes in place. They set them in the racks. They fire them. When they get back to port, they take the empty tube off and put a loaded tube back on. But these are anti-ship. They have a 75-mile range. They use sea skimming technology, meaning they fire very low to the waves. And then they have the ability to do what they call a pop-up maneuver at the end. So when they get close to the target, they can be programmed to come up like this and come down, make them harder to shoot down. And often what we would do really to confound the enemy is we'd send them in pairs. So we'd have one do the pop-up and the other go straight in. So let's say they had a phalanx or something similar, shoot them down. At the end, they would do a split like this. So it makes it very hard to track them and figure out, if you get one, you might not get the other one. These are the well-known Tomahawk missiles. These have a 200-mile anti-ship range and a 1,500-mile in the land attack version. So these are called armored box launchers. So the missiles are stored in here and launched from here. The ship doesn't carry any extra missiles. So it's got 8 of these launchers, so that's 32 missiles that it carries, and then 60 of those launchers. When they're gone, they're gone. Now, when these things get ready to fire, when you walk around and look at the sides, you'll see like a hinge in the back bottom corner and a kind of an angled seam on the side. So the top half, it raises up at an angle like this, similar to those, and they get launched that way. Of course, they don't have to be pointed. They're internally guided, so they have a solid rocket motor that gets them, several miles away and up to speed. And then when the solid rocket, and these all cruise missiles work the same. They have a solid rocket that gets them up to speed, and then that burns out, and the turbofan kicks in, which is a jet engine. And then they fly like a pilotless jet. They just cruise at 550 miles an hour. So they're not screaming in supersonic or anything, but they just fly along. In the case of the Tomahawks, they actually have little wings that flip out and they fly. But again, they use sea skimming technology over the water. And then when these get over land, this was pre-GPS. Today they use GPS and satellite guidance and all other kinds of stuff. But in those days, all they had was satellite maps loaded into the missile's computer. And then they had a downward-looking radar that would read the terrain. So when it got over land, it would start reading the terrain, compare it to its stored images that it had. And once it figured out where it was, then it could just follow the terrain. So if there was a mountain, it'd go up over the mountain, down the other side, follow a river up through a valley, or whatever you tell it to do. And they couldn't control it once it left the ship as far as redirect. Well, yes and no. They couldn't retarget it, but they could load multiple targets in the missile. So it had target A, B, C, D, E. I think it was like 20 targets they could program in. So what they might do, let's say you had a real high-value target you wanted to destroy, so you might send 5 or 6 missiles after it. If the first one takes it out and it's destroyed, then you could say, okay, target B, target C, and you could retarget it. The missile would take off and go on to the next target down the. It's like an NFL quarterback doing the checkoff. Check down the.
So they shoot this.
Well, they would raise up, but they would just shoot out. Yeah, so all they have to do is be at enough of an angle just to get clear of the ship. So they would go up and then they would turn and go
so
their way.
This is the top end.
Yeah, the top half raises up. Yeah, the whole thing raises. When they load it, they have